evening and welcome to CBS 42's presentation of the South's hidden history. I'm Sherry Jackson.
And I'm Jim Dunaway. We're at beautiful Kelly Ingram Park right here in downtown Birmingham. It's part of the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument, and we'll give you more on that in a little bit.
We're taking a look at events in Black history which impacted our lives here in Alabama and across the South. Some you may know, some you rarely hear about.
Our goal over the next 30 minutes is to give you some of the hidden moments of Black history.
We begin with two exceptional female athletes who are now members of the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. The Alabama Sports Hall of Fame was created nearly 50 years ago. Since the late 1960s, it's collected more than 5,000 sports artifacts from those athletes inducted. What makes this Hall of Fame different from its counterparts around the country is that among those enshrined here is the first African-American woman to win a Winter Olympic gold medal. In fact, in 2002, Birmingham native Vanetta Flowers became the first person, male or female, from Alabama to win a gold medal in the Winter Olympics. Using her speed developed on the UAB track team, Flowers and her Olympic teammate took home the gold in the inaugural Women's Olympic bobsled competition in Salt Lake City. She was named one of Essence magazine's 50 most inspiring African Americans, and in 2011, Vanetta Flowers was inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. Before Flowers was winning gold in cold weather sports, Alice Coachman Davis did so in the Summer Olympic Games. Originally from Georgia, Coachman Davis was a 4-year All-American in track and field at the Tuskegee Institute and winner of 25 national titles between 1939 and 1948. She won a gold medal in the high jump at the London Summer Games in 1948, becoming the first African-American woman to win a gold medal in the Olympics, setting both U.S. and Olympic records by leaping 5 feet 6 1/8 inches in the high jump finals. That chance may have come earlier in her life, but World War II forced the cancellation of the 1940 and 1944 Olympic Games. Alice Coachman Davis passed away in 2014 at the age of 90, and her memory remains etched on these walls. You can see both these athletes' exhibits here in Birmingham at the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame.
Coming up, it was at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, where the life of the most iconic figure in the civil rights movement came to an end. As we continue on the South's hidden history, this is the 16th Street Baptist Church, one of the many sites of the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument. Now from Alabama to Tennessee, where the National Civil Rights Museum pays tribute to Martin Luther King Jr.
It was built on the site where he was assassinated on the balcony of his motel room in April of 1968.
But it also shines a light on dozens of the lesser-known characters who played important roles in the civil rights movement.
You've heard of Martin.
I'll have you arrested.
And you've certainly heard of Rosa Parks, who so famously refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus to a white woman in 1955.
And this is what would later become known as the birth of the civil rights movement.
But what if I told you the household name of Rosa Parks could have been replaced with Claudette Colvin or Mary Louise Smith?
Both, like Rosa Parks, decided not to give up their seat to a white person on the bus.
And they did it the same year and in the same city as Rosa Parks. 15-year-old Colvin was arrested in March, Smith in October. These unsung heroes may be lost in many history books, but not here at the National Civil Rights Museum, where everywhere you turn is a hidden hero waiting to be found, like Bayard Rustin.
Well, he does get lost in the shuffle.
Who spoke before more than 250,000 people at the March on Washington in 1963.
He was Martin Luther King Jr.'s right-hand man. behind the scenes.
And he had the pleasure of speaking after Dr. King. Talk about a hard act to follow.
He goes on right after arguably one of the most important speeches that's ever given in the history of the United States.
But King's I Have a Dream speech might have never happened had it not been for Rustin.
Barrett Rustin, if you're looking at the March on Washington as a motion picture, he was not only the director, he was also the producer.
The Westchester, Pennsylvania native had his hand in everything from training security to writing slogans to even, yes, the lineup of the speeches that day.
He had to remain behind the scenes because he was openly gay. And in the 50s and 60s, it was extremely taboo.
But nowhere was it more violent than Birmingham, where a bus carrying Freedom Riders was bombed and dogs were sent after children. It's where Dr. King did some of his most important work. Dr. King was even arrested in Birmingham, penning a letter from a Birmingham jail when he was arrested for defying a court order prohibiting marches. But he would have never come to Birmingham if it hadn't been for a man named Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. Reverend Shuttlesworth was leading the fight for civil rights in the most segregated city in America. His home bombed, a target of the Klan, while leading marches and protests. Shuttlesworth co-founded the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, with Dr. King, and encouraged his friend to help him in the fight in the city known as Birmingham.
Had it not been for the courage and insistence of Fred Shuttlesworth to invite Dr. King to Birmingham, it's unsure if segregation would have ended as a result of the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, signed the following summer.
The fight for civil rights had many faces, and they have a home where they can forever be remembered. In Memphis, Tennessee, I'm Kelly Cook.
The National Civil Rights Museum also prides itself on being a meeting place for those currently involved in civil rights issues.
From traveling art exhibits to peaceful protests surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement, museum leaders want to make sure the museum stays relevant.
Coming up, people have traveled across the country to sample the legendary brisket of an Arkansas barbecue giant. A look at the A.G. Gaston Motel, which is just one building that helps make up the nearly 4 downtown blocks of the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sherry Jackson.
And I'm Jim Dunaway. You know, it's been said for years that barbecue can break down racial barriers, and it's been happening for a long time in Marianna, Arkansas, a little town in the Arkansas Delta. Historically, it's always been known for farming. Many of the town's people worked in the fields, picking and harvesting cotton.
Today, the town has a huge African-American population. Although many are low income or poor and much of the housing is dilapidated, since 1964, one man has brought many people in the community together, black and white, with a simple barbecue sandwich.
And now the story of James Harold Jones and how this Black history tale has become a fascinating American story.
Inside this little white building, a worker takes embers from a fireplace and puts them into a barbecue pit to smoke the meat. It's early in the morning, but 71-year-old James Harold Jones has already started selling his popular pulled pork barbecue. And this is what, lunch? Breakfast. The sign says it opened in '64, but it's believed to be the oldest black-owned restaurant in the South.
It's been in the family over 150 years. My granddad's uncle once started.
And the sauce hasn't changed.
What's the secret to this recipe of yours?
What I put in it?
It's a family tradition that doesn't care how much money you have.
How are you, James?
Or the color of your skin. The color that matters here is reddish-orange. But lately, Jones has been getting a lot of attention.
Do you ever get tired of running?
No. Only thing I get tired of doing it is interviews.
He won the so-called Oscars of culinary work, the National James Beard Award for his American Classic Sandwich, the only person in Arkansas to ever win it. But it didn't take a national award to prove if you want some, you better come early.
You don't have any more?
I won't have no more until after 1 o'clock.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, that's the way it happens, like that. See, I never know from one day to the next day how big a crowd I'm gonna have. And when it's out, it's just out.
Until tomorrow, when the meat is smoking as it has for the last 150 years. In Marianna, Arkansas, I'm Donna Terrell.
In a day where most restaurants are all about variety, at Jones Barbecue, you'll find two things on the menu: barbecue and the barbecue sandwich.
From appeasing your taste buds to appeasing your earbuds. Next, we learn about musical contributions of the Louisiana African American community.
Now, on the South's Hidden History, we go to Louisiana, where street music has influenced a new generation of musical artists.
Our story begins at Jackson Square in New Orleans, across the street from the Mississippi River.
All this music that we playing out here, it come from slavery days. You know, it's just like with our forefathers and everything brought from Africa to the streets of New Orleans. And well, if you look Miami, you can see the Mississippi River, and that's where all the slaves used to get off the boats at.
Kenny Terry blowing his trumpet, along with his band members beating their drums and playing the tuba loud and proud at Jackson Square.
And this is what we do to keep our culture going throughout New Orleans, you know what I'm saying?
They're mainly playing New Orleans jazz music, also known as Dixieland. Jazz replaced ragtime music. The new jazz music had an African-based rhythmic pattern such as stomping and clapping, a West African influence, and a European classical music entwined. The music originated by African Americans, which emerged out of New Orleans and took over at the turn of the 20th century.
It's a mixture of Dixieland, jazz, all that at the same time. It's a mixture of them. Louis Armstrong inspired me, and it's important because it helps me become a better person in life.
But before ragtime or jazz, stars like Louis Armstrong, the music of Louisiana started with slaves. I'm standing in Congo Square here in Louis Armstrong Park in New Orleans, where as many as 500 to 600 enslaved Africans would come here and congregate on the Sunday afternoons in the 1700s all the way up into the 1800s, where they would dance, sing, drum, and make music to what we now know as present-day African American music.
They brought their own music. They brought their own instruments.
Mike Shepard, president and managing member of the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame in Baton Rouge, says blues, swing, and jazz all originated in Congo Square.
That has been a tradition down there since the 1600s, since Congo Square opened that up and brought the rhythmic blends that New Orleans became famous for.
And musical contributions of African Americans in Louisiana from Congo Square didn't stop there.
It really made the music of the whole United States. And everything came from that. The rock and roll, everything except the country.
Kenneth Terry and his band at Jackson Square plan to carry on their forefathers' musical contributions.
What we do is we keep the music alive.
Today, hip-hop has replaced jazz and blues as the voice of young African Americans. In New Orleans, I'm Justin Campbell.
From Congo Square in New Orleans to Bill Street in Memphis. That's coming up on the South's Hidden History.
We're back here now at Kelly Ingram Park, where protesters, including children, were violently attacked by police dogs and powerful water cannons.
And finally tonight, New York City, it has Broadway, New Orleans has Bourbon Street, and in Memphis, it's Bill.
It's one of the most famous entertainment streets in America, bringing the blues to the masses. But there's also a hidden history to it.
Music is important to us because it's part of our lifestyle and our way that we communicate.
On Beale Street, it's easy to see and hear. This is where the world is welcome to the South, with a hearty helping of soul and a story.
We use our music and our talking to share experiences and lifestyles.
See, blues is a story, and no one knows it like Judy Pizer.
I'm sure we have it marked somewhere. Slideshow that we did on Beale Street. Yeah.
What started with a few films
Candlelight tribute to Elvis from Graceland.
turned into a major archive here at the Center for Southern Folklore in downtown Memphis.
It's important that we are able to, through the festival and other things, give people a stage, give people a voice, give people a way to celebrate themselves.
And the Center's archive brings those stories to life. We're talking about an era before Gibson Guitar opened its doors, and even before FedEx Forum moved in, and before the West End joined the neighborhood. We're going back to a point where much of the area surrounding Beale Street was an empty lot that replaced many of the homes and businesses that were very much a part of the Beale Street neighborhood.
We called it urban removal because about 400 buildings were removed out of that area. You still see vacant lands.
Shelby County historian Jimmy Ogle told us these vacant lands were home to a thriving black community in the Jim Crow South.
At the turn of the century, Lieutenant George W. Lee made this phrase that it was a mile of vice and ambition owned by the Jews, policed by the whites, and enjoyed by the Negroes. We're in a segregated city, and the blacks couldn't go up on the main street or other areas.
By the 1880s, Robert Church, the first black millionaire in the South, bought land around Beale, and with his son, who was a political leader here, helped Beale Street take shape, building Church Park Auditorium, at the time the largest assembly for blacks in America. Then across the street was Solvent Savings and Bank. And over the decades, as the business district and the number of black businesses grew, so did the energy, especially after dark.
Somebody told us years ago that I think Penny Southern, Beale Street on Saturday night was like having ice cream when you weren't used to having anything but bread pudding. Beale was that fabulous night on the street, the night we put on our good shoes, the ones that hurt, you know, and went out to be seen.
Music brought a who's who list of names to Beale during the 20th century. As a major African-American street, it took center stage during the Civil Rights era.
The Civil Rights movement really carried out through Beale Street as well. Dr. King, the last 3 big moments of his life were in Memphis, Tennessee, his big public moments.
Parks and venues pay tribute to the well-known names and hidden heroes who made Beale what it is today. The sights and sounds around this world-famous street help its story live on.
The most important thing is that we listen.
In Memphis, Tennessee, I'm John Paul.
Beale Street suffered a major decline after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but historians spent the 70s and 80s restoring the street, making it once again a music capital.
We hope you enjoyed our journey around the South, and maybe we showed you just maybe one new moment of a hidden gem of black history.
Although we've highlighted just a few, there are still hundreds, thousands more moments waiting to be discovered. Moments you might discover yourself if you look closely enough. For CBS 42, I'm Sherry Jackson.
And I'm Jim Dunaway. Thanks for joining us. And as always, you can learn more right now at WIAT.com.